Institute, and we're delighted to have you here. I want to mention there are some handouts out there that go through all of the lectures that will be coming up on Thursdays. Be sure and look at those and join as many as you can. We just had a great lecture yesterday with about 75 people filling the room, so that was on the connection between science and religion. It was very, very effective and very powerful. Today we're going to hear a wonderful lecturer on Rumi as a spiritual guide. And many of us have already been blessed by Rumi, and we'll look forward to this. I want to mention something about Andy Achenbaum. He's a great pal, a friend, a lot of fun for all of us who know him here. He's the author of 5 books. He's also the co-editor of about 11 other books, so he's quite published. He was the past chair of the National Council on Aging and the secretary of the Genealogical Society of America. He's the founding dean of the College of Liberal Arts and Social Sciences at the University of Houston. And he spends a lot of time up here, at least one day a week, writing books. He's recently completed a history of a man named Rick Moody, who's very significant. And now he's working on one about as I understand, about baby boomers, and it's all about spiritual healing and biographies of other Americans whose lives were transformed by the touching of the lives of other people. So it will be interesting what this man comes out with in his books in the future. There's one in particular I want to get, and I didn't even know you had. It's called Older Americans, Vital Communities by Johns Hopkins University Press. Sounds very impressive. I've got to get a copy of that. Please give a warm welcome to our speaker, if you will, Andy Achenbaum. Turn yours on.
Oh, yes. Or maybe you'll turn it on.
Just hold that button down for a couple of seconds. We'll talk. That's where we got it. Yeah, it's got it.
Okay.
I usually sit loudly. Too loudly? Over in that seat, because I hate questions and answers. I'm so used to teaching. I'm not used to sitting as a captive audience. So I have to get out of here as fast as I can. But today I want to stay, and before I get to Rumi, I want to give a bit of an advertisement about this place. Because I sit in this room every week, probably as much as John Graham and Jerry Doctor in the back, listening to people talk and realizing that much of the history of this place is on the walls. And so I want to start with the name. It's now called the Institute for Spirituality and Health. And it's even younger than I am. I'm discovering that most things are younger than I am. But it's had at least...
Let's pull that down. Just pull it down. Yeah, there you go.
At least 3 names, okay? How many damn things? Shouldn't say damn.
Go ahead.
Let's see if we can push this forward. Institute. I have spent most of my life in departments. College of Social Work is as small as a department. History departments. And you get to figure out people all the way. European historians, American historians, old historians, young historians, Harvard historians, non-Harvard historians. And they fight. They just fight all the time. Except in social work, where they don't fight, they just process things and get them unresolved. And so what you need to do is to find an intellectual oasis. And institutes are great intellectual oases. Doesn't say it's a department. Doesn't say it's a college. It says it's an institute. Sounds very good. I mean, Albert Einstein was at the Institute for Advanced Studies, so an institute. At Stanford, they have about 17 institutes. I think we have about 4 at the University of Houston because we're trying to become Tier 1. So it's very important to have institutes. Institutes are important because they're freestanding. And if you're weird like me, and you really don't want to end up in jail, you need to be in some setting where the fact that you're nuts isn't such a big deal because everyone with you is nuts. It is, in fact, freestanding. It's not beholden to a bishop. It's not beholden to a president. It's just there. And so the fact that this is an institute started 50 plus years ago as a freestanding entity is important. And if you look at those smallish posters right near my family from Connecticut, and here and back there, you'll see that they call themselves the Institute of Religion. That's it. Institute of Religion. So let's stick with Institute. And then it says at the Texas Medical Center, which was certainly not as big 50, 60 years ago as it is today. But it tells us something about this institute. Institutes have to have a purpose. The bad thing about an institute is if they don't produce, if they're no good, if they don't raise money, that's why I put with tax status. I was going to ask Jerry what the tax form was. I think it's 301C or something. 501. But 501, whatever the hell it is. But you get your income tax. You get to sign it off. So any money you give to this place, serious money, not money tonight, but serious money that you give because you believe in this institute, you can write off. Which means that the federal government, in its infinite wisdom, thinks that it's important to have certain places where weirdos get together to think up ideas that matter. And in this particular case, the ideas that apparently mattered were ideas that were going to be important to Methodist Hospital, University of Texas, Houston, St. Luke's, Baylor. A bunch of these hospitals were nearby. And so you have an idea that they're not really interested in being left-handed smoke shifters. It's probably not an institute of proctology. It is, in fact, an institute which is thinking about certain ideas which may have an impact on this community. And so when John says, I sit here because I know people are going to leave me alone. Except when there are other people sitting here who are equally weird, who want to generate good ideas. So we bring in people like Ken Pergamon, who's a senior distinguished scholar in religion and gerontology, and he galvanizes people to think. And you sit there, if you're someone like me, and say, God, this is really good. This is really important. And you have students like Holly come, and she says, so what? So all of a sudden, it can't be just theoretical. It has to be applied. Who cares? And see, it all fits together. It's freestanding. It's Texas, how everything's freestanding. But this one will die if it doesn't produce something. It'll die if it doesn't generate ideas that willing people are to pay for. And what they're after is ideas, which in the trade I work in is the coin of the realm. They're ideas, they're good ideas, and they're holy cow ideas. And I promise you that Rumi fits into the holy cow idea set. But you really have to sit there and argue and criticize and discuss, and it's great. What you want are new ideas. We might as well be a corporation. New improved oil. New improved idea. I became an academic because my sophomore year in college, one of the greatest historians I ever met said he was happy. Who the hell ever heard of a middle-aged man saying that he was happy? So I went to his office. It was before smoking was bad, so his office opens and this billows of camels burst out. What do you want? Well, sir. I wasn't even a Southerner, but I knew you said sir at that moment. Well, sir, why are you happy? I'm fixed on the power of ideas. The guy could have given me cocaine. It changed my life. Because I realized, in a family that was very supportive of ideas, that in some circles, ideas really mattered. It's wonderful to be able to talk to students about the football team, the weather. But what you really, sorry, I shouldn't bet. What you really want, thank you. You're hear my stomach ground now. What you really want are ideas that transform them as you watch them transform you. Ideas are wonderful, but the transformative power of ideas comes from dialogue, from conversation. And it really doesn't matter if they went to Harvard and you didn't. The question is whether or not they're brave enough to share ideas that matter to them in a way that speaks to you so profoundly that you'll risk sharing your ideas. I've had many happy moments at this institute because people have dared to share ideas that matter to them that I could talk with others. The current mission of this place, missions change all the time. When I was at NCLA, when I got bored, I used to say, let's change the mission. Because it's important if you're on a board that you know what the hell you're supposed to do. And so you really should be held accountable. Trustees, board directors should do two things. One, make sure the damn place doesn't go bankrupt. And two, make sure that whatever's being done there is being done that sort of fits what they say they're doing. To enhance awareness of the role that spirituality plays in healing, in coping with chronic illness, and in maintaining optimal health. Two things to note. One, the religion's gone. It's now spirituality. Sometimes it's tacky, like if you look at the parking lot, there are signs that have a big S over the R that used to be there. I mean, this was really a class act. We wanted to save money. I actually like that fiscal responsibility. But clearly, religion's out and spirituality's back. But what's religion? Religion, as far as I'm concerned, is a community or communities of individuals who, for the most part, I'm an Episcopalian, we're sort of loosey-goosey, share, one, certain beliefs about the divine in the world, and come together to celebrate life. I tried to be as neutral as I could, within a sacred canopy. Sacred canopy, of course, is Peter Berger's phrase for what the whole world looks like and what goes on inside of it. And in this place, the Texas Medical Center, it was mainly mainstream Protestant clergy. I'm not suggesting that they were Republicans or middle-of-the-road Democrats, but I am suggesting that they were mostly Methodists, Presbyterians, Episcopalians, Lutherans, who really were at the far mark of what was going on. Up north, we just call them Protestants. But down here, because of the differentiations, you want to call them mainstream Protestants. And his primary function was to help chaplains, to help educate chaplains, who were very important in hospitals. Hi, I understand you're dying. Do you want me to talk to you? Or something like that. Maybe there's a better way to say that. And so they would come to the Institute and try to figure out a slightly better way to go about their business. Health. I turn 65 tomorrow. I just had a grandchild. What was his APGAR reading? They gave me a number, 9.6. Well, what was wrong? 10's perfect. See, I can grade that very, very easily. But for the most part, the doctor comes in, shakes his head, says lose 20 pounds, and then he starts telling me, well, good, no recurrence of cancer. Chronic illnesses, they suck. But if you get to be my age, you'd have been around the track a few times with chronic illnesses. The heck with pneumonia, the heck with the cardiac arrest. It's these aches and pains, it's these mental things which seem to accumulate. I'm healthy. I am healthy. I think the AARP should be shot for saying, oh, 60 is the new 30. I know what a 30-year-old body looks like. I do not have a 30-year-old body. I am perhaps healthier than my father was at 60, but the truth of the matter is I am not 30. I can renew myself. I'm old. Be young. Bad chance. There's not enough Botox in the world to make me look young. But I can renew myself, because new is the other opposite of old. And that sense of renewal and restoration. See, if I were on the board of this place, you'll be able to see why I'm not in a few moments. I wouldn't say the Institute of Spirituality and Health. I would use the word healthfulness. I'm about as healthy as I can be. I don't smoke. I exercise every day. Except for the fact that I'm going to New Orleans for the weekend and will binge. I live a fairly good diet. It's helpful. As healthful as my nephew, who's 24? Hard. But it's optimal health. We don't heal here. Dr. Graham is, in fact, a physician, so he could heal. Certainly could heal more than I could. I'd be sued for malpractice. But in fact, we don't do much healing. Unless you're talking about the sort of heart-to-heart soul talk, which doesn't include prescriptions, doesn't include surgery, but does include ideas. And so, a couple years ago, in fact, it's really hard to see a place on the board where you can see it, but you can see it outside and you can see it on the board. This place changed its name from religion to spirituality. It did so in part because mainstream Protestants, while very important to this place, God forbid we get rid of the Methodists, Lutherans, Presbyterians, Episcopalians, aren't the only folks in town. As a Yankee, and you can probably guess I am a Yankee, there are extraordinary traditions in this town. To walk across the University of Houston campus is to look at a little UN. To walk through MD Anderson, any of the hospitals, is to realize how many different faith traditions exist. And in my lifetime, which is now encompassing much of this world history, at least the world history my students understand, there have been a couple cutting-edge sweeps. Fundamentalism is not just an American grain seen on primary day. It is, in fact, around the world, with just about every tradition competing against those of us who have sort of a capacious view of the world and those of us who want to reassert orthodoxy. They're evangelicals. They're evangelicals in every mainstream Protestant, Catholic, Jewish, Islamic tradition. And while we all claim to be ironic, we can sometimes get very ugly about the way we express our faith. And then we get the boomers. I'm a boomer. I'm about as boomer as you can get. I love to travel. I love to spend money traveling. I love to spend money traveling to weird places. Machu Picchu, India, any chance I get, Africa. And I look, I read. If I don't do that, I go to the video store, if there are any left in Houston, and pick up travel logs of different places. In fact, boomers, like me, can claim that they are, in fact, very much adherents to their parents' beliefs, but are also interested in spirituality. So what's spirituality? Once again, definitions are very hard, but academics like definitions. I can go to a raving activist, which is what I would call myself, or I could introduce you to Bob Hess, who gave a brilliant talk on forgiveness, and in fact is very interested in contemplative prayer. Those are all spiritual journeys. And I use the word journey deliberately. There are a lot of preachers who like to use the word story. I'm a great storyteller, or so some people tell me. But what I'm really interested in is the path, the bend, the gully. And I think Rumi is too. Because I don't think most paths are linear. I was raised in a tradition where you had 3 boxes of life. You went to school, you worked. I've never worked, so I can't retire, but I'm told that people do that in some sort of sequence. I don't pass go. I'm not going to get $200 tomorrow. I don't think I'm going to get $200. Am I getting $200 tomorrow?
Not a chance.
So I figured I'm shot. But it's clearly intentional. It is not something I do willy-nilly. And I suspect, for that reason, that those first lines of Dante's Inferno color where we're going. I found myself stuck, that's his word, in a dark woods. Tragedy. That's when I discovered spirituality. The third brother died. A mentor died. A good friend died. And I got really depressed. And in many ways, it was having to come to terms with that dark shadow, that dark woods, which got to me. Which is why I think Jung is right too. I'm not a Jungian, although I read a lot of Jung. I think this is the stuff of middle age, which doesn't magically start at 40, 33 and a half. But it does start at a certain point where you begin to realize that everything that you needed to get through to become a success, or not even close to a success, doesn't work as effectively as some other things. And so that second half, the afternoon of life, as Jung puts it, becomes very important. I'm a fairly well-known gerontologist. I have been studying old age so long that now that I'm there, people just assume I was always old. And maybe I was. Let me let you in on a dirty secret. It is not as gray and dull as I ever was led to believe. I will spare you some of the gory evidence for that fact, but I assure you, I am having more fun, enjoying more ripeness now than I ever did. So what's my definition of spirituality? Well, you came for a fancy lecture, you had to pay money, so let's use 3 fancy words. One, it seems to me, is an appreciation of transcendence. If I can define God, if I can define some ultimate reality, I'm shortchanging whatever that ultimate reality is. It's as vast as I can go. I love photography. I love to see scenes of nature. I haven't camped out since I was in the Army, and I don't intend to camp out before I die. But if you can show me a cliff over the ocean, if you can show me trees, if you can show me flowers, I begin to hold my breath. God, I can even wax on when I go up in a tower in Houston and look at the city. It's really amazing. It's everywhere. So transcendence, I absolutely believe it. Immanence, even though I went to Quaker schools for the first 5 years of my schooling, I have trouble with this inner light stuff. It somehow sounds blasphemous to me to say that there could be the spark of the divine within me. And since I'm so narcissistic, it's really a very bad suggestion. Unless you remind me that every living creature has the spark of the divine in them. And all of a sudden you understand why people say you have to respect the dignity of others. Why you have to celebrate life. I'm a historian. I'm paid, actually fairly well for a historian, for studying the past. And because I'm shameless, I forecast the future. Usually worse than an economist, but it doesn't stop me. I remind them that I'm being paid less than an economist, and so they're actually getting a good deal. What's really hard for me is to be in the now, to be in the present. In fact, to push this into a trifecta, to imagine that at any given moment, my universe is encapsulated. You don't have your immediate family except for your 2 kids and 2 grandchildren in a room listening to a lecture to fill up space, but I do. We have a lot of track record, long track record. And God willing, although I'll be driving on I-10 tomorrow, you shouldn't, we will have a long track record even in the future, despite my bad driving. But that transcendence, immanence in the here and now. And that's why the journey can't be linear. It's why the journey can't be unpurposive. It's why, for me, it's very, very important to maintain some base with an institution, to maintain some loyalty to this institute, but to realize that I'm moving on. There are lots of spiritual mentors, and because I was raised in a sort of Anglo-Catholic tradition, it is not surprising that many of my mentors were Catholic or Anglican. Richard Rohr, out in Albuquerque, who I visit about once a year, believes everything fits. This semester I'm teaching a course on spirituality and aging at the College of Social Work. It's a discussion of the 12-step program. What could be more practical in a country riddled with addiction? Henri Nouwen, one of the most extraordinary spiritual directors, who ended his life working in a community for the physically and mentally handicapped. He spent most of his life attending to the physical needs of a 12-year-old boy. None of them could understand that he was one of the greatest writers and speakers. It's love. Spirituality is just love. You can understand love in all of its wondrous manifestations. You're there. Or Joan Erickson, the sidekick, the soulmate of Erik Erikson, who after Erik died decided she wanted to revise the life cycle revisited and for some reason called me. You don't know what it's like to try to carry 12 boxes of hummus on planes to Cape Cod and make sure they don't spoil. I love women. This woman had the most incredible legs I have ever seen. She is 85 when I see her for the second time in my life. I saw her in her 60s. She was a dancer. Son of his daughter, actually, was an Episcopal minister from Canada, and married to Erik. Things I could tell you that one, especially on video. But her spin was transcendence. And I love that word as opposed to transcendence because it's so active. But now, finally, since I know you would go home, to get towards Rumi. This book, which I can't say that I read at 40, I read more august translations. This book, The Essential Rumi by Coleman Barks, is the best-selling book of poetry in the United States. Go figure. Go figure. The University of Georgia's English teacher, no offense to the University of Georgia, but who the hell are we kidding? This guy did retire and just became a writer, speaker about Rumi. Official, kosher, not too much. But he captures what to me is the essence of Rumi. Romance. I love the word romance. I love romance. I love the yin and the yang. And what Rumi is after is that these are love poems for an ultimate God. He rarely uses the word Allah. I'm using the word ultimate force, which I don't know if he even uses. That's my word, not his. But what I'm suggesting by saying it's within is the immanence. In all is the transcendence. And as we get into it, you'll see that it's really a wonderful definition of spirituality. I'm not sure who plagiarized who, but it doesn't really matter. As long as you see it as active, even if it's contemplative, if you see it as this ability to leap out of yourself. And so now, to go back to a tape just to see if you're awake, it is in fact the same tape because I didn't know how to change it. To enhance the awareness of the role that spirituality plays in healing. Not healing like turning to Dr. Graham and asking him to give us medicine. No, I'm talking about a healing where you can feel the gape, perhaps the trauma, you deal with the chronic illness, and you can feel it washing away. You can feel the romance restoring, renewing you. All at once, dramatically, oh, perhaps for some. But for most of us, we scratch our head, we grope, mope, cope. But we try. Now you're ready for the talk. Rumi, I'm not even going to try to pronounce his official name. What the hell is a boy from Philadelphia who spends most of his life in Ann Arbor doing, reading every day of his life, some 13th century guy? Well, I like pedigrees, and this guy comes from a hell of a pedigree. His father was a judge, a mystic, a theologian, who got kicked out of Afghanistan. Everybody seems to get kicked out of Afghanistan sooner or later. And then somehow managed to find himself in the middle of Turkey. When I say in the middle of Turkey, I am asking you not to think about the Silk Road. I'm not asking you to think about I-59. I am asking you to take a 6-hour bus ride with a bunch of students who are wondering, what the hell are we doing on this? Trust me, you're going to love it. So the guy gets there. His dad's this big fancy fellow, starts an institute essentially, has to have tax credit, but I don't think the Turks had to write the US tax code, and it's an open university. It's very important to talk about being an open university, because in Turkey all these things are class and gender based, and this guy allowed all sorts of people coming in. And Rumi, man, all he has to do is stay alive. It's sort of like being Franklin Graham. Try not to say anything offensive on national television, and he'll be just fine. He's happily married, has kids, and then he has a friendship, which I capitalize. And I capitalize it because many of us have friendships, and there's some that knock our socks off. Shams was a dervish. That is to say, he was a Sufi dancer. Those of you who've ever seen the whirling dervishes know that they come out in white robes. White in Islam is a symbol of death. And they get into a trance. It is ecstatic, in the classic word, out of standing. Standing out of myself. It's highly ritualized. It is absolutely fascinating to watch. And they have a friendship. People get upset. See, if I were a Pomo expert, I'd say, God, it was gay. It wasn't gay. It was spiritual. It was intense. And Shams had to leave Qom. He went to Damascus, which was a fairly safe, open city. He came back 2 years later. Rumi's son invited him outside one night and killed him. The spirituality can be very deadly stuff. And obviously this causes Rumi to go into Dante's Dark Woods, although they're not quite at the same chronological age. And what comes out of it is this extraordinary, almost manic outpouring of themes, devotions. I think I've probably been drunk twice in my life. I will admit that for a certain point of that journey, it was a lot of fun. But the next morning, it was less fun than I expected it to be. And if I've ever gotten drunk these 2 times, I'm admitting, it was never in a tavern. I hate taverns. I hate bars. But in the interest of Rumi, in the interest of anthropology and scholarship, I occasionally frequent bars. And one of the things I notice is that if you were an anthropology student looking for a thesis, it's really great stuff. Y'all come over, you hear? Especially in Texas, all this y'all stuff and sir stuff and all that other stuff. Everybody sort of gets warm and fuzzy and warmer and fuzzier. And then really fuzzy. But the point is that if you're romancing God, if you're dancing with God, it does reduce inhibitions. And to read Rumi well is to acknowledge, I mean, I'm about as uptight a middle-class person as you're ever going to meet, but to get me to loosen up, to make me take risk, that's when I feel human. I can be very crude. As you can tell, I swear sometimes in formal lectures. But you know, I think most humans are earthy. We're 1 week away from Ash Wednesday. What could be more earthy than having somebody put a black sign on your forehead and say, as if you didn't know, that you are dust, and to dust you will return? Afraid of death? No. tortured, dying, yeah. That connection is liberating. As liberating as viewing life as a stream flowing into an ocean. As much as I think Galveston needs to clean up with the EPA, I do enjoy looking at the tributaries. We're part of it. It really flows on. I've already talked about celebrating love, and I want to get to the poems. Longing. My favorite song, the first 6 verses of Psalm 42. As a deer goes to the stream, so do I thirst for you. Amazing. Amazing. I no more look like a buck or a doe than the man in the moon. But I understand that thirst. Hell, any Texan understands that thirst. I never drank 9 glasses of water in my life before I came down here. I even understand the loneliness. I don't like loneliness. Actually, I do. I love having my brother and his family down. I'll be thrilled when they go. No one's going to move for a couple of days. Will I be lonely? I'll be alone, but I won't be lonely. But there are times in which I am lonely. There are times in which I feel myself very much in a desert. I think that's life. If it's the Mojave Desert, I'm toast. If it's the desert that I can live with for a while, I'm okay. Unity of God, I love religion. I'm an amateur in the strictest sense of the word amateur. I love it. But I think dimensions of God, representations of God, way out of a Victorian Episcopal church, are extraordinary. Serendipity? You know, it's such a funny word for a guy who said he's a research scientist in an institute to use. Because I should be such a positivist, so logical. Well, I'm illogical as hell, I'm not a positivist. But I really do believe that things are coincidental. And I don't believe they're accidental. I think it is serendipity. And I think when you come across serendipities, they're in the heart of spirituality. So, you ready to do a poem? If you go to your spreadsheet, we've got one. Well, I think which one. The top of the second full page. Jerry, trying to save Institute money, went back pages to this, like page 3. I can razz Jerry. I'll pay for it, but I can razz Jerry. Only breath. One of you wants to read it, please? This is the first block. Perhaps the family member. Yes, you, Joe.
Which
tell us that you had literacy at Union and Chicago Business School.
What's that?
Only breath.
What about it?
Read it, please.
Oh, you mean the part that says not Christian?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Very good. Mr. Perry would be pleased. You've just passed 2 E-Pass tests. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. I'm sorry. Not Christian or Jew or Muslim, not Hindu, comma, Buddhist, comma.
We don't need the punctuation. Just
Sufi or Zen, period. Not any religion, period. Or cultural system, period. I am not from the east or the west, not out of the ocean or up. From the ground, comma, not natural or ethereal, not composed of elements at all. If I do not exist, comma, and not an entity in this world or the next, comma, did not descend from Adam or Eve or any. Original story, period. Sorry. My place is placeless, a trace of the traceless, neither body or soul, period. I believe to the beloved and have been, and have seen the two worlds as one, and that one call to and know first, comma, last, comma, outer, comma, inner, comma, only that breath, breathing human being.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Who's that sound like? U.S. poet, 19th century. Yes, this is English 3. Come on, it's all cumulative. Walt Whitman, Song of Myself. I'm not this, I'm not that, I'm not this, I'm not that. 13th century. Christian or Jew or Muslim, that makes sense to me. I mean, hell, he saw them. Turkey is, if nothing, one of the great crossroads of interfaith dialogue, and certainly the three children of Abraham. But this guy knows Hindus. You watch it on MTV. Buddhism, Zen, not any religion or cultural system. I'm not from the East or the West. Hell, get away from this ocean nonsense. I'm not from that either. I'm not from Adam and Eve. Just keep stripping away. Go ahead. Strip away, strip away, strip away. You're not going to peg me. But in my essence, I'm breath. First, last, in, out. I have sat in this room while people tried to teach me how to breathe, to remind me that breathing is elemental, fundamental, essential. Only that breath, breathing, human being. And we're back into immanence. What could be more basic? What could be more fundamental than breathing, honoring that breath, paying attention to that breath, seeing the intentionality in that breath? That provoke comment, irritation, or should we go on to the next one?
Don't look at me.
I know it provoked irritation from you 5 minutes in, so I'm not worried about that. The reed flute song, Spare Me, My Brother. Good, Helen.
Listen to the story told by the reed of being separated. Since I was cut from the reed bed, I have made this crying sound. Anyone apart from someone who loves understands what I say. Anyone pulled from a source longs to go back.
Actually, this goes on some distance. Thank you, John. I'm sorry. Thank you. What's a reed? Help me.
It's a plant that grows in the water.
Very good. It's a plant that grows in the water. And what do I do with reeds sometimes?
Cut them and make flutes out of
Bingo. Did you take this class before?
them. No.
I'm very impressed. Thank you very much.
It's
And
one of our earliest musical instruments.
Keep going. We got till 6. Go ahead. It is. No, it is. She's absolutely right. But look at what he's doing to us. Reeds are, in fact, very important in Turkish society. It's one of the fundamental instruments. And so, in a sense, this is like talking in our culture about bread and wine. We are getting down, if not sacramental, to elemental aspects of life. But the reed, become a reed, what do you know? You do know, because you can read the first line and you're bright. I'll ask my brother, do you want to spare us that? And he said, no. It's been separated. This is the loneliness and longing theme of Rumi. Notice the paradox. I will make beautiful music if you cut me apart. But all I've done is made this crying sound. It's music, but it's longing. And if you've ever loved, and all of us have, and if you've ever been separated from that significant other, you want them. You want them. Anyone pulled from a source longs to go back. I sometimes think I don't want to be in a tavern. I would like to be in a cosmic Wesson oil party. I would love that unity. I would love that movement back and forth. And I would like to be whole, not only within. Unfold your own myth. Good, thank you.
Who gets up early to discover the moment life begins? Who finds us here circling, bewildered like atoms? Who comes to a spring thirsty and sees the moon reflected in it? Who, like Jacob, blind with grief and age, smells the shirt of his lost son and can see again? Who lets a bucket down and brings up a flowing prophet? Or like Moses, goes for a fire and finds what burns inside the sunrise. Jesus slips into a house to escape enemies and opens a door to the other world. Solomon cuts open a fish and there's a gold ring. Omar storms in to kill the prophet and leaves with blessings. Chase a deer and end up everywhere. An oyster opens his mouth to swallow one drop. Now there's a pearl. A vagrant wanders empty ruins. Suddenly he's wealthy. Don't be satisfied with stories, how things have gone with others. Unfold your own myth without complicated explanation, so everyone will understand the passage we have opened to you.
It's very straightforward, but it's really worth heeding, it seems to me. I'm struck by a couple things. What are you struck by? We forgot the last line. We got to flip over.
Start walking towards shams. Your legs will get heavy and tired. Then comes a moment of feeling the wings you grow.
I'm not much of a poet. In fact, I'm no poet at all. But this is disjointed, and that's exactly my point. You sort of read it in bits and pieces, which is why Barks can get away with producing this book. If this were a traditional academic book, we would get certain passages under one chapter, another section of another set of books. There are, in fact, some that are more theological, and he wrote them in spurts, not Barks. Barks said, this guy gives you sound bites, really good sound bites. So take them as you see them. So here we are with the first story. The first story clearly is appealing to those of us who know a little bit about Judaism. Moses, I've heard that name before. Solomon. Solomon ever opened a fish? Solomon ever opened a fish? Pastor? Doctor? Learned theologian? Did Solomon ever open a fish? Or is that a fish story? Out of the mouths of an associate rector of St. Martin's comes no fish story. He's too honest. So apparently that's not it. No. You are?
I'm going to guide us
Okay.
a little better.
Thank you. Sorry. So he plays a little loosey-goosey. But at least we know there was a Solomon. I remember he was in the middle of a book somewhere. Moses. I've heard of Moses. Moses, fire. I remember fire and Moses too. Wasn't there something about a burning bush? Yeah, that was all there. And the bucket. Damn, this guy really knows Jewish history. What the hell is this guy in the 13th century in the middle of Turkey, from Afghanistan no less, know about Jewish history? And Jesus? Did Jesus really, what did Jesus do? Slip into a house? Well, actually he did. Remember early in Mark, a bunch of the folks want to get on him, and so he hides in a house for a while until they go away, and then he slips out. So there's some basis to some of this stuff. Omar storms in to kill the prophet. Well, actually, that is what happened. What we have is sound bites. Sound bites here, which make some sense. I'm not going to claim that chase a deer has anything to do with Psalm 42. But the oyster, we've heard that nugget many times. And then we get down to what I think is the punchline, which is why I didn't stop our young physician in training. Don't be satisfied with stories, how things have gone with others. I'm a great storyteller. 13 weeks of me for 3 hours would be hell. Just hell. What we want is your story. Better than mine? Who the hell cares? Worse than mine? Who the hell cares? We want it to be authentic. Unfold your own myth. Not unfold your own story, but unfold your own myth. Oh, that's like Myth America? No, it's not quite like that. There is a bit of fantasy in all of this. But in fact, what we have is myths are like ideological weapons. They guide us. So the myth of American innocence helps us fight heinous wars. The myth of America being plentiful helps us squander the environment. Unfold your own myth without complicated explanation, so that everyone will understand the passage. And then we get the first kicker. Italicized. That gives us a hint that we, not Andy, we have voted for. The act of storytelling is taking place in a sacred canopy. And what we have done is empowered for you the right, the privilege, maybe even the obligation to tell your story. And then we get to this last, start walking towards shams. Don't give me this airy-fairy stuff. Show me the loved object that you're longing for. When he writes this, Shams is dead. But just because he's dead doesn't mean that that is there. And then look at the paradox. My legs will get heavy and tired. I spent yesterday walking around the rodeo, something I never would have done if my brother had not come down with his family. And my legs got tired. And so I sat in a salt bath last night. But then comes a moment with that heaviness, with that chronic pain, with that awareness of that chronic pain, that you feel the wings, not that someone gave me, but that I grew. I grew them, and they're lifting me. Transcendence. The man gets it, he can leave early. That's right, it's transcendence. Thank you. Thank you very much. 2 more, and then we'll call it quits for questions. The guest house. Got a volunteer?
How are you?
Thank you.
The being human is a guest house. Every morning is a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meaningless, momentary awareness comes on unexpected. Welcome and entertain them all. Even if they're a cloud of sorrow, violently sweep your house into you as furniture. Still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice. Meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each is sent as a guide from beyond.
It's the same themes we've been after. But look at how it begins. You, every one of us, is a guest house. Not a mansion, not a McMansion, a guest house. Imagine you down South Padre Island or someplace like that, where strangers are going to come. Sometimes I'm scared to death of strangers. They don't look like me, they don't act like me, they don't smell like me. every morning is a new arrival. I hold office hours occasionally. Serendipitously, students sometimes come by. I ask them to keep the door open because I'm really worried about social work protocols and losing my tenure. And I never know what's going to happen, what to expect. It's actually sort of thrilling. Sometimes it's very boring. And that's where we get in the next line. A joy. Oh, it's so nice to greet you. God, are you tedious? A meanness. I can be very sarcastic, very vicious. But it comes back. Notice the flip-flop here. Welcome and entertain them all. Oh, yippee-skippity, I'm about to be depressed. Yippee-skippity, this person's going to kill me. Even if they're a crowd of sorrow. And notice the passion with which he writes. Who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture. Still treat each guest, not selective guests, it's a guest house. Any guest. Because that evil, that sadness, that tragedy may be clearing you out for some new delight. God, this sounds like Marilyn Williamson. It sounds like Oprah on a bad day. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, same affect. We went to the Breakfast Club this morning. I love the Breakfast Club. It's one of my favorite places in Houston. They must be paid extra to smile every time I walk in that door because they couldn't be that damn glad to see me. And then I look, and while it hurts my narcissistic pride, I realize they greet everybody that way. And then part of the charm of the place, besides raising my cholesterol, is the fact that they are so bloody friendly. They laugh. Adults don't laugh. Adults shouldn't laugh. And they invite you in. Be grateful. Be grateful. Give thanks. That's the chordate of love and forgiveness that runs right through so much of theology and spirituality. Be grateful. Because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. And so we get the transcendence, the sacred canopy, yet again. Within us, at the moment when that presence comes. There's one more poem, which I like because it reminds me of a Borscht Belt joke. It's also 6 o'clock, and so I'll keep going? Okay.
Okay.
How about if I read it so I don't embarrass someone by reading it? This is earthy. A dervish knocked at the door to ask for a piece of dry bread. Or moist. Sorry. Thank you. Or moist. It didn't matter. This is not a bakery. Can't you see them? Can't you see Jack Benny doing this? This is not a bakery, said the owner. How about a little flour? You're not going to give me bread. Give me the elements of bread. You hear a grinding stone? Some water. This is not a well. Whatever the dervish asked for, the man made some tired joke and refused to give him anything. So finally the dervish ran into the house. Remember, dervishes, or God bless you, are Sufis, who are a little bit, they should be at the Institute of Spirituality and Health. They're normal, but they're not going to be locked up, but they're not exactly what we would call normal. Lifted his robe and squatted as if to take a shit. Actually, if you go back to Islam, that is in fact the word that's used. Hey, hey! Quiet, you sad man. A deserted place is a fine spot to relieve oneself. And since no one's living here, or means of living, it needs fertilizing. The dervish began his own list of questions and answers. This is Job, chapter 39. What kind of bird are you? Not a falcon trained for a royal hand, not a peacock painted with someone's eyes, not a parrot who talks for sugar coos, not a nightingale that sings like someone's love. All birds which thrive in Turkey. You can just see the visual picture. The guy is just doing pictures, like this wall stuff up here. I mean, just like image after image after image. It really doesn't matter if you look at any damn one of them carefully. You get the point. We shouldn't use the word damn. Not a nightingale that sings for someone's love. Not a hoopie that brings messages to Solomon. He really does everything for Solomon. Or a stork that builds on a cliffside. What exactly do you do? You are no known species. You haggle and make jokes to keep what you own for yourself. Have you forgotten the one who does not care about ownership, who doesn't try to turn a profit from every human exchange? It's cute. It's current. And the point grabs us. I'm a good American. I'm a rapacious capitalist. I negotiate pretty well sometimes. You haggle. You make jokes to keep what you own for yourself. Get a life, team. Get a life. You don't need to turn a profit every time. We can give. And we can stop. Thank you. Now, normally I would be running out of the room and John Graham would be going. He always leaves early. But since I'm the speaker, I will stay for 2 seconds. I'll see no questions. Have a nice evening.
Wait a minute.
Andy, that was a
Wait a
good
minute.
presentation.
Well, thank
you
Yeah.
very
Thank you.
much.
I enjoyed it.
Made it come alive.
You're running too fast. I'm sure there might be a thought here. Give us
I'll walk
time.
the seat. I'm willing to think he's the pace setter.
I have a question. On the
You're a medical student. You're not allowed to have questions.
Unfold Your Myths, he says he has the wings at the end, right?
I'm sorry?
He says you grow wings at the end. How do we grow the wings? Is it the act of walking, or is it something else?
How do I think it's done? That's a very good question. And I'm not going to give you an honest answer, because I don't really know what's good for you. Keep reading, and you'll grow them where you have to grow them the time you want. But finish the medical training, you'll be a very good pediatrician.
There's a beautiful book written by the same author called The Illustrated Rumi. Have you seen that?
You know, I got it as a Christmas gift this year from some students of mine who knew I liked reading. And I think I liked for the inscription in the book, that the book's beautiful. You're absolutely right. You have a copy? Good. That's good.
And I've given several copies to other people because I enjoyed it so much.
Oh, I think that's wonderful. Good.
You know, what I thought was interesting, there's nothing in here that would make you think of Islam, but there's everything in here to make you think of the heart of every human being and where we all are. Even this rather brutish look at humankind with the whirling dervish who are actually doing spiritual things but are, well, never mind what they're doing. They're relieving themselves and being human. And I thought it's interesting the passages you picked of Rumi, because Rumi also he talks about Jesus, He talks about religious figures of all faith. He's totally ecumenical and able to grasp. He teaches us so much about being able to catch the transcendent wherever it may be found, like the bird, like all that you see, the parrot, the beauty of, I mean, it's all there in Rumi. Rumi has got it. He is wonderful, I think.
I think one of the things I like about him is, because I do teach this, and I have students tell me what passages, I think the Achenbaum, they'd like to talk about, so I never know quite what's going to come out. And then we try to unpack them in the here and now. And what hits me is how much that I would call extraordinary really comes out of the ordinary.
And remind me when he was writing, what year?
13th century.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, no internet, no Google.
Well, isn't it true that he never wrote anything down himself?
That's debated. Actually, that is debated, because when he died, they found writings. And so unless he had a scribe, he, in fact, after Shams, had a series of students. Shams was older than he, and so the mentorship actually went the other way with Shams. Later on in his life, after Shams was killed, he will take in a couple, say, Ph.D. students, grad students, who will help him out. And so you are right. I mean, a lot of the writing was done by them. But it was his, it's all oral tradition. I mean, that anybody write anything in the 14th century, 13th century is a big deal. But he did write, I forget, Maranatha, I'm not pronouncing it right, you know. That was found after his death. So he had it.
At the unfold your own myth is so like Carl Jung's.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think, I tend
Did
to
you
see.
steal it from Rumi?
Well, I don't know. I think
That's a possibility.
it is a possibility.
Yeah, it is.
But I mean, I think what this says is, this is a conservative audience like I am. I think people should read classics. I think people should read good, new stuff that I never read when I was in college. And I certainly never read Rumi, but I should have read Rumi. Because Rumi gets out of the box, both historically and geographically. I mean, there's a relevance, an immediacy to this that you can't miss. And I think that's true of Walt Whitman. I think that's true of a lot of stuff that we view. Peter studied classics in college. It was wonderful to listen to him talk about how he was translating things, because, here's this kid, obviously post-World War II, considered post-Korean, post-Vietnam, who is in fact reinventing tradition as he sits there and grapples with verb tenses. In fact,
Where are the Sufis today?
well, they're everywhere, actually. They're very, the person who gave me this was born a Presbyterian. Tried drugs at Yale, went to Santa Cruz, which is a great place for religion. And while he was there, married the daughter of the Episcopal bishop, two of them. And I go visit them in Boulder periodically. And there's a group. They don't talk about it. He would kill me if I mentioned his name. And I respect that. They're around. And when you go to Turkey, I go to Turkey every once in a while. It's very clear that they permeate this Gulen movement and all that.
I haven't looked as far as Houston. I can't seem to find it.
I don't think I've, send me an email. I'll
Well,
tell you what,
send you
I'll tell you what
an email.
maybe. We're done.
Thank you.